Hey, Freight Pod listeners. Before we get started today, let's do a quick shout out to our sponsor, Rapido Solutions Group. Rapido connects logistics and supply chain organizations in North America with the best nearshore talent to scale efficiently and deliver superior customer service. Rapido works with businesses from all sides of the logistics industry. This includes brokers, carriers, and logistics software companies. Rapido builds out teams with roles across customer and carrier sales and support, back office administration, and technology services. The team at Rapido knows logistics and people. It's what sets them apart. Rapido is driven by an inside knowledge of how to recruit, hire, and train within the industry, and a passion to build better solutions for success. The team is led by CEO Danny Frisco and COO Roberto Acaza, two guys I've worked with from my earliest days in the industry at Coyote. I have a long history with them and I trust them. I've even been a customer of theirs at Molo, and let me tell you, they made our business better. In the current market where everyone's trying to do more with less and save money, solutions like Rapido are a great place to start. To learn more, check them out at gorapido.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. I'm your host, Andrew Silver, joined today by a, per usual, special guest, Mr. Greg Paulson, CEO of Giltner Transportation and Giltner Logistics. And we're going to be talking trucking today. How are you, Greg?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm happy to be here. I've done a lot of these interviews. I think this is maybe the 60th or somewhere around there. And I've had very few trucking companies themselves, like owners, CEOs of trucking companies. I've had a few, but not many. And you guys are such an important part of the equation here. So I love the opportunity to get guys like yourself on here and learn more about your journey, more about your business, and how you guys have grown from this kind of mom and pop shop 30 plus years ago to a very kind of mainstay in the industry and a very well-reputed company. So why don't we start with your background? How did you even find your way into trucking? You're an accountant by trade, correct?
Yeah. So the way it all started was, so it's funny, in preparation for this, I did do a little bit of reflecting. And so I started on April 19th of 99. I was a CPA working for a CPA firm, and Giltner was a client of ours. I was 27 at the time, so I was kind of the young accounting guy, and they'd send me wherever just because I was young and they could do that. And I kind of hit it off with the owner of Giltner, Doug Blevins, at the time. Um, and I was spending more and more time there. His books and everything were just a complete disaster. And we just hit it off, and he offered me a job. And so I started on April 19th. And so in about a month, that'll be 26 years. And I was 27 when I started. So 1 year from now, it'll be like half my life. So, but it went by like that.
Half your life at one company. So take me back. When was the company first? When did Bob first start the company?
That was like in 1980. And what it was is he was kind of a milk transporter, a local milk tanker guy. And we have a ton of dairies in the area. He was hauling milk into a little company called Jerome Cheese. And they asked if he could take some of the cheese onto Wisconsin. So he bought a couple of refrigerated trucks. There's actually one of the cool things here a while back, we were recognizing one of our drivers with 4 million safe miles, Tommy Nelson.
Tommy, right? Yeah, I saw that. I was going to ask about him.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
What's funny is the clip we did on the internet is a short clip, but he and I had a long talk about everything. That guy knows more about our history than I do. So really, really cool to have Tommy be part of our team still. So we ended up taking the cheese back to Wisconsin, and then Doug Blevins came on. The company started in 80. Doug came on as the bookkeeper in 90. Doug was amazing at a lot of things, but not bookkeeping. But he was really good with people and leadership. I came on in 99, and somehow the trucking company, they did some stuff taking the cheese, but they really weren't good at refrigerated over the road stuff. So they basically just told Doug to take over payments and he could have it. And there wasn't that many trucks, and Doug really built it from about 90 to 99 into a pretty good sized company. We were doing a ton of potatoes out of Idaho going to Texas. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I started, and Doug had just really gone crazy and grown it ridiculously fast. And then in about 2003, a couple years after I started, one of our biggest customers took all the potatoes and put them on the rail. So we had nothing. And we were a one trick pony. And that was all Doug knew how to do was take potatoes from here to Texas. And then we had some good customers bringing us back. And that was completely destroyed. And not only that, he had just upgraded. Volvo at that time came up with the new 770 tractors, and they
Mm-hmm.
were so heavy that they were just terrible. Everybody in the whole industry could do about 2,000 more pounds than we could. So we had lost our biggest customer. We had trucks that were too heavy. And then we really didn't know what the hell we were doing. So we were shotgunning trucks all over the country. And that's when I learned how to be a trucker, was at that point.
So a couple of things. First, I don't know why I called him Bob. Shame on me. I meant Doug.
No, there was that was Bob Giltner was the guy, and then Doug Blevins was my guy.
I did see that right.
Yeah,
Correct.
you're right.
Sorry. Okay, confirmed. It's another point you just made. So it's interesting. A couple of things. First of all, one of the first lanes I remember moving was that exact cheese lane. When I was doing work at Coyote for Kraft Foods at the time, it was not Kraft Heinz, it was Kraft Foods when they still owned the snack business within Mondelez. We helped a lot of their inbound, and they had inbound cheese from Jerome, Idaho, into where in Wisconsin, and one of their plants in Wisconsin. I can't remember exactly where, but I do remember moving those loads. So that's funny that you mentioned that. Also, an interesting anecdote for people who don't know. So you're in Idaho, Jerome, Idaho, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Which, as far as I know, because I grew up, my first like real customer as a sales guy was a company called Ruby Robinson Produce. So I'm a sales guy at Coyote Logistics. I'm like 22 years old. I'm trying to find customers. And the first thing I thought to do was go and look at all the old customers that we used to work with that we no longer hauled for. And if you think about why we might no longer haul for them, one of the reasons might be they're not easy to haul for, or not great to haul for. And I was like, screw it. I refuse to have no loads. So I'm like, I got to find loads. I get in touch with these Ruby Robinson guys who are a produce broker based in Chicago, but a lot of what they're doing are potatoes and onions. And so the first few years of my career, like 60 to 70% of the freight I was moving were potatoes and onions, largely out of your area. And so it's not easy freight to move. But secondly, I always thought it'd be great to have a carrier based there because you could just pick off all the freight you want, unless you've got the heaviest trucks, because that's a problem. You know, for some customers, not a big deal. For the produce guys, the onions, the potato guys, they want to load that thing with every single extra pound they can. And having a heavy truck, that just kind of disqualifies you, or at least reduces the price you're getting paid, because a lot of those guys were wanting to pay you per pound, right?
Right. Yeah, so it's brutal. You were probably better. The cheese thing, that was where we got started, but in all fairness, you were probably better at that than we were, because we never really pulled that off. The potatoes were kind of what we built the company around, but then we kind of messed that up at that time. So then what made it worse is right about that time, for some reason, Doug decided to expand, and we ended up purchasing the private fleet of a small potato packing plant in Idaho Falls. And we didn't know what we were doing. Our due diligence was terrible. We bought this fleet. It was all old, beautiful gold Peterbilts that were like 98s, and they were cool looking, but they got terrible fuel mileage. And when you buy a private fleet, all the drivers are spoiled. They just like to go out and come right back. And we didn't realize this because have no business buying anybody, but we bought them like in October, and like March.
What year is this, roughly?
The year was about 2003.
Okay.
Yeah. So right
20
about
years ago.
then, all those drivers had a retention bonus that came due like in March, and we paid this huge retention bonus, and then half of them quit. It was just wonderful. So,
I feel
and
like
it was
as the accountant, that's kind of your job to be like seeing those
well,
things before in the due diligence. We're all
uh,
young ones though, so I get
yeah,
it.
yeah. I was young, and you got to get your butt kicked a bunch before you really learn to the importance of digging into those things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was where we were about then, and we had to learn how to be truckers and learn about lane density and customer relations and building things that made sense and trading equipment, and we were down for the count for about from 2003 to '05. We were done. I mean, I had a bankruptcy lawyer on retention, and then we did a bunch of stuff that made it turn around.
So
So,
talk about that. Why did you end up, why do you feel like you guys ended up down the bankruptcy path? Just a series of poor
well,
decisions and
what
mistakes and kind of,
well, trucking is like a lot of people are going to be able to relate to this right now because that was a hard time in trucking too. It goes in these cycles, and that was kind of
mm-hmm,
one. And when things are going bad, you lose your money real quick, and we just had a lot of things go wrong all at once. So what I learned the hard way at that time is in order to be successful at trucking, there's four things you got to do. You got to raise rates, increase utilization, cut costs, and keep it safe. Okay. And so that's kind of what, and it sounds so simple, but you can build a company based around those four things. And so what we ended up doing is we were shotgunned all over the country. We were struggling. And what really, we ended up calling all of our lenders and talking to them. The used truck market was in the toilet, so nobody wanted to repossess our trucks. We did call them all the time. Every day I managed the books in a way that I had here's what I must pay, like fuel and drivers and everybody, and here's where I put what I'd like to pay, like truck payments and trailer payments. And we survived like that for a period of time. And then we found this customer out of California doing produce, and they were in trouble because they couldn't deliver their lettuce on time. And
mm-hmm.
their customers were all mad at them, and they were losing their customers. And we went in there and serviced the hell out of that account. And they paid us better than everybody else. And they needed us so bad that they just absorbed our fleet. And all of a sudden, we were doing one thing over and over, and it paid good. And then, so we had fixed our operations piece. And then on the finance piece, we were still struggling in our equipment. Even though we were healthy, it had done so much damage, nobody was lending us money, so we couldn't get new equipment. And the repair bills were starting to kick in. And then Tab Bank out of Utah came down. It was actually a guy, JJ Singh. He sat down with us and he worked with us and he took over our line of credit and he bought us basically. He was trying to get big into the equipment space and he got us all new equipment. And that just immediately turned us over. So it was the right traffic lanes with some density and all new equipment and a new financing program, and then the trucking company was on solid ground at that point. It just took years to undo the damage we'd gone through, but then we were solid. And we've been operating better with those lessons we learned the hard way ever since. We're relearning them right now and getting back to basics. I got some new people that we're having to go back through that. And but we're in better shape than certainly than we were at that time.
Yeah. I mean, great points across the board. I love the kind of 4 points you mentioned. I'm curious in finding that lettuce customer, um, they're based in California. You guys are based in Idaho. Were they running you back to your like
No, it was up and
domicile, or
down.
you were
It was up
taking
and
loads
down the
all?
I-5. It was up
Oh,
to
all
the
West Coast.
northwest and back. Yeah, yeah.
And did they run you back, or you guys were finding other customers just to get you back down there?
Even though we're based out of Idaho, Idaho has some nice traffic lanes, especially now. At that time, it wasn't quite as popular a place to get to. But we've never had all of our truckers based out of Idaho. So
Yeah.
it's like you don't necessarily get all your trucks home on a regular basis. And you don't want all your drivers to live in one place because then if you have a holiday and you want to get them all home for the holiday, there's not enough freight to get you going. So you want them to be based in your traffic lanes. California is a tough state. There's a lot of special rules to being a trucker focusing on California. At that time, there was more freight in California than there is now.
hmm
Um, so it's just kind of a cycle. But at that time, that was the thing that saved us.
And just so I can give the audience an understanding today, what does the Giltner business look like in terms of the overall? Give me just the size and scope of the whole business. We'll backtrack to get to how we got there, but I think it helps for people to understand like what the business looks like today.
Yeah. So we're not a huge company. We've got just under 300 trucks. And we run primarily, out of Idaho. We do a lot out of Arizona, Texas. We do a little bit of stuff going back to Florida. We stay away from the Northeast. We do California and the Northwest. That's on the transportation side. The brokerage is about a $250 million a year brokerage.
hmm
A couple of years ago, we were pushing 300 million, but things have slowed down a little since then, like everybody. Then in addition, we have our factoring company, which is does about 100 million a year in factoring, and then we have an insurance agency and a compliance business where we try to help small carriers buy insurance and be successful.
Got it. Thank you. And with respect to the actual trucks you own, can you dive a little bit deeper into what that makeup is? How much of it? It's all refrigerated, right? Or most of it's
Yeah.
refrigerated?
It's 100% refrigerated, except for 6 trucks I got running out of Cartersville, Georgia, that are heavy haul. And those guys, they got all the axles and the Peterbilts, that can do the 250,000 pound backhoes. Just because I knew a guy and wanted to do that, and I kind of backed him, and we got that going, and he's really, really good at it. But that's only about 6 trucks, so everything else is refrigerated uh, trailers.
So one thing I'm curious about, it almost feels like a chicken and egg situation. You mentioned both your Cartersville, Georgia, one-off 6 trucks, heavy haul, and then also mentioning how like, your business is based in Jerome, Idaho, but a lot of your trucks or your drivers, I'm sorry, are domiciled probably up on the West Coast from California up to Oregon, Washington, whatever. I'm curious, like how you think about the idea of recruiting and securing traffic lanes, like which comes first, like if you go find the customer and then you go want to find drivers who can run that customer, or you find good drivers and then it's like, okay, I know this guy lives here, I gotta go find him a customer out of there. How do you think about that kind of problem?
You know, you it is a real problem. It's a chicken or the egg, just like you said. And it requires discipline and patience and really hard work, right? You get some lanes that go to a place where you really shouldn't be going, but you go there a little bit, and then you tell recruiting they can recruit there, and all of a sudden they recruit a ton of guys there, but you don't have very much freight there. And so before you know it, operations is deadheading guys home, and you see these huge deadheads or this crappy freight that somebody took to get somebody home to a place where you shouldn't be going. So it's it comes down to basics, and you want to go to as few places as you can where you can get freight. You shouldn't take freight going somewhere where you don't have freight. We do right now, I want to say about 22% of our freight is from brokers, and the rest of it's direct customer freight. We do probably another 8% where it's like our brokerage feeds our own trucks. So maybe
hmm
30% between those two. Um, but most of that, right now, especially in this market where the spot market's way below the contract market, that is our worst freight. And so we do get a little sloppy. Back in 2000, like 22, it was the spot market was so high, it made you sloppy because you could go anywhere you wanted, and there was, oh look, there's a $3 a mile load. I can get wherever I want from there. I'll just
hmm
go take these drivers on a joyride wherever they want to go. We don't care, and we got sloppy. And this market has made us focus and get back to the basics of these are our direct customers. And if you don't do everything on time, you're going to lose them. They're precious. You got to fight for them and you better be on time. And then we got to get away from going to crazy places. We got to pick our battles and get real good at it.
Are you looking to grow your brokerage? Are you struggling to land new customers in these challenging market conditions? Look within. So many companies that tender you freight throughout the domestic United States also have business coming out of Mexico. A year ago, I understand why you might not have seen that freight as an opportunity. But today, Cargado exists. And that means any load coming into or out of Mexico is now an opportunity for you to support. In just over a year, I've been able to see Cargado go from ideation to launch to rapid growth. It's amazing to see how many logistics companies have been able to use Cargado to expand into Mexico to grow their business. Cargado is the first platform that connects logistics companies and trucking companies who are moving freight into and out of Mexico. If you move Mexico freight or are planning to, reach out to Cargado today at cargado.com. That's CARGADO.com.
So density is a word I commonly hear among the carrier community as a fundamental and priority in building out your capacity lanes or your traffic lanes. And I'm curious, like when I think about my engagement with shippers in the past, and bear in mind, purely as a broker, so I think it's maybe a different conversation. And I don't like to group any of our categories as like one thing. Like I don't think all brokers are the same. I don't think all carriers are the same. And I don't think all shippers are the same by any means. But the idea of being able to like build consistency within a network in a brokerage is not as messy if I lose a lane. If you lose a lane, it feels like it can be pretty freaking messy. And if you've got a lane you're running from LA up to Portland and it's got some density to it and you're running 5 guys a week on that lane, and all of a sudden like that lane gets pulled in the next bid because of, I don't know, 1 cent a mile or someone just overlooked it. I'm curious like what the experience is like for you and your company as you navigate bid cycles with shippers. Do you see more loyalty? Or do you have the same challenges that the rest of us kind of have? And just kind of, can you talk a little bit about that?
We go through that. There's all these basics in trucking that you have to be really good at. And one of the things that we struggled with a little bit was how to properly bid freight. We had one of our guys kind of pulling rates out of the air and not getting ahead of the market and what the market was doing a couple of years ago. So we did a big bid for one of our customers. And because of the way we bid, we got underbid on all the easy stuff and we won the loads that were super, super hard with a bunch of drops because we underbid those and we overbid everything else. Yeah. And so now we did that freight. The OD pairs were okay for us. So the origin destinations were fine, but we didn't perform as well. Then the next 2 years later, we're doing a bid and they look at our performance and we're not on time as much as everybody else was. And I don't think they were able to really analyze that, hey, we had a whole bunch of drops. Everybody else had 1. And it turns out they did better. But it is what it is. And so we even lost some of those lanes. And that particular customer is one we love. This year, we really did a good job on their bid, and we didn't win much freight, but what we got is perfect. And we're going to look good. It may take a couple more years to get it dialed back in, but we're going to get back in there. So it hurts because it's these drivers build their lives around your freight. They're real people and they might live out there, or you get them into a rhythm of they get home every week or every other week or whatever, and they get some consistency in their life. And then that gets ripped out from underneath you. And then you have empty trucks or you have to go find drivers. And that's tough, And so we try really hard to keep the drivers we have and take good care of them. But we have driver turnover. And when you have things like major lane changes, that it hurts because you lose drivers.
Yeah. So that was going to be my next kind of question was, Have you seen it so directly impactful in that, like, you lose a lane and you just immediately lose drivers because there's nothing you can do to, all of a sudden you're like, hey, I know you've been running LA to Portland for me, but the only load I can offer you is LA to Vegas. And they just say, I'll go work somewhere else. I'll find someone else to drive for.
There's some of that, but generally we try to build, most of our lanes have more than one customer going each way when we're really doing a good job of building it. Like you got the Midwest has meat, but there's like 5 people that make some really good, pork and chicken and stuff coming out of the Midwest. Most of it goes to certain locations. So you get good at industries and not necessarily one company. It still hurts because some of those customers you really do fall in love, and it kind of breaks your heart when you lose them because you get like emotionally attached to that business and stuff. But you generally you want to be into markets and lanes bigger than one customer so you can survive some hits like that.
Yeah, the diversification. I mean, it's something again, I've only lived on the brokerage side, but it's something I used to say to my sales reps all the time is, would you be happy with your book of business if your top customer fired you tomorrow? And if the answer is no, you better get on the phones and go find some more customers.
Right. Right.
And I think the same thing.
I mean, one good customer and they just want to sit on their laurels. And that's success is the enemy of really good success,
100%. 100% complacency falls in there. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the concept of drivers recruiting, and I'm also curious about the notion of owner ops versus company drivers. From what I saw, Giltner started as a small business that was only owner operators, and maybe Tommy was the first company driver, if I saw that correctly in the video, or one of the first.
Yeah.
Talk to me. What does the business look like today in terms of owner ops versus company drivers? And I'm just curious for your general take on what it's like dealing with owner ops versus company drivers, what the benefits, pros, cons are to each side.
Yeah. So I love the owner operator, lease operator model. And I think it's, when you look at trucking, you handle a whole bunch of money and you keep just a tiny little sliver. So if you do everything right, you get good utilization, the rates are reasonable, and you manage your fuel mileage properly, and you don't idle your truck all night, and you get, just keep going. The nature of fixed costs and variable costs for a trucker that wants to be a lease operator and do a good job, they can make a lot of money, especially a couple years ago, right? When the rates were so good. Now they're just doing better than my company drivers for the good guys. But back then, we had some guys that made a lot of money. And then some still left and went on their own because they could do even better. At that time, nobody needed shippers. So the lease operator model, you've got fixed costs and variable costs in trucking. So you've got to get a certain amount of miles. The good lease operators are to be dedicated to you, push themselves where they can get those miles. They're paying for the fuel so that they're going to not idle their truck all night. And so they just manage their expenses better, their utilization better. And then one thing that's funny is I always benchmark my company trucks against my owner operators. My owner operators always get the better freight. Their adjusted rate per mile is always better. And the reason is because they'll tell my load planners they will argue with the load planners and they won't take a crappy load. And so my load planners, unfortunately, they use the company drivers as a crutch sometimes, and they'll deadhead a company driver to go save this load that we should have probably never taken anyways. If the owner operator doesn't want it, they're probably smarter than you, and there's a reason they don't want it. So quit trying to fix the problem with these company drivers. You screwed up and got that crappy load, and it's, so in a certain extent, but we just swing in our owner operated company truck numbers during like 22 when the rates were so high. We swelled our owner operators and our company trucks went way down. And then it kind of went off a cliff and it's kind of gone the other way to where we're at about 100 company and 200 owner operators, still primarily owner operators, but we got 100 company. And we're not that good at managing company drivers. You've got to have driver managers that really watch the utilization, that get the drivers to stay out there, to hit their goals. And you got to watch their idle time and their fuel. And you just got to be on them and work with them, set goals and manage them. And if you're not careful, they will lose money.
So a couple questions coming out of that. One is, why would someone choose to be a company driver, given what you just laid out? If I'm, contemplating coming to work for you as a driver and my options are company driver or leased owner operator, why would I pick the company driver route?
Yeah. But one is, there's a lot of things you don't have to worry about, and you don't have to stress quite as much. You get in the truck, you get the miles, you get paid for deadhead. You drive, you get home, you get health insurance, you get 401k, all those kind of things. And so you can do really well as a company driver also. And especially now that we're getting some lane density back and really trying to get some miles on it and you and work with you. It's easier, it's faster, it's and then the owner operators are the guys that are just going to run a little bit harder, and they want the risk and reward of having their own business. When at this point it's about sixes really, where the owner operators that run well and the company drivers probably make about the same amount of money, but a couple of years ago the operators made a lot more. So
The other question I had coming out of that is, when you look at your business and you say, like, hey, I feel like we need to be doing better with how we manage our company drivers, what are the things that you do strategically to make that happen? How do you make that improvement come to fruition?
Well, it comes back to raise rates, increase utilization, cut costs, and keep it safe. So as far as raising rates, we're going through our traffic lanes and we're analyzing our traffic lanes at a level we've never done before. I'm literally taking every lane and saying, what's my revenue for the next 10 days on this lane? And the thing about that is, it's not just the one load, it's this load puts you in this place where you got this next load. And we're not just looking at the rate per mile, we're looking at the revenue per day. And so the revenue for the next 10 days on maybe 2 to 3 loads put together is X. And we're actually finding 2 loads. We are finding loads that look good, but they're not good because you had a better alternative. And so we're analyzing the lanes, improving the lanes to get the utilization and the rate per mile up. We're going with our driver managers and we're completely redesigning their hours and their accountability. So we had this program with driver managers that were 4 on, 4 off, and it created a lack of accountability where trucks would do bad and they were like, well, it's only half my fault and it's half this other guy's fault. And now we're going to say, these are your trucks and you don't share them with nobody. If they do bad, it's on you. So we can benchmark the trucks against each other, the driver managers against each other. And then we actually created report cards for every truck. So we're grading them. You get a grade on your adjusted rate per mile, your miles, your fuel, and we're taking a hard look at all the critical events we get from a safety standpoint. How many hard braking, stability warnings, those kind of things. And so we're just diving down with a lot more quality that we're trying to get out of these each and every driver and every driver manager. So just safety, utilization, and rates.
So I think that's a really interesting concept of how you're kind of analyzing the opportunity cost of a given lane relative to what other freight could have been considered. That seems like a really challenging thing for someone to do on their own as just a person, me looking at DAT and my customers. So I'm curious, is there technology that you're using to, it feels like as we're coming into the age of AI where there are tools that could be used to do this and give you as efficient of a routing plan as you can get. So how does that work in your world?
The problem you have is you've got load planners, and load planners typically have an area. And so they like to hot potato drivers. And they're like, it's so obvious when you look at the whole picture. The reason you got a good rate from point A to point B is because there's nothing at point B. You send them to the worst place on earth and you think you're a hero, And so if you're not careful, they'll just hot potato your drivers to the worst places and they all think they're amazing, but it's just, you got to look at the bigger picture. And that's the problem with the load planner setup where they each have an area. We are using some software. It's Truckload Wizard, I think is the name of it, but I think there's a lot of software out there. It's just the concept of the opportunity cost, like you're looking at, and really driving in and getting true analytics out of it. We've reached out for some help for some other consulting people, and we're starting to see it. I think there's quite a bit of software out there to help you do that, but we've been at it a long time, and we're kind of tapping into some people that can do it better than we ever did it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious about the notion, because part of how I think about the opportunity cost is like there's only so much an asset carrier can do. I just feel like you the doors open when you have brokerage involved, because there's typically more customers that you can look at, more lanes to look at, more opportunities. And so if you're trying to understand the true opportunity cost of a given lane, bringing the brokerage into the conversation can be helpful. And I think you said before that about 8% of your loads come from your own brokerage. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the brokerage and the asset work together, and like what the benefits are to having the brokerage? And I'm curious about what it's like selling into customers. I got to stop doing this thing where I ask 4 questions at once. Let's just start with the original one around the brokerage and the asset together.
So the way we started our brokerage was in about 2010. We had a gentleman come to us that his name is Rob Stevens. He's a great guy, and he knew a ton about brokerage. I had seen brokerages not work with asset-based companies where they didn't respect each other. The asset-based company would look at the brokers and say, you guys are not good people and you're just out there taking advantage of people. And if you got a good load, I'll just reach over there and take it, and it'll be mine because I'm more important. And then the brokers would look at the asset and say, hey, I got this crappy load. Nobody will take it. I'm just going to take one of your trucks and put it on there because it's a dumb load anyways. And so they would cannibalize each other and not respect each other. So we started off the relationship between the two companies with a boundary in the middle, and said, we are going to treat these companies as though they're separate companies. And then we're going to try to get people to work together because they actually respect each other and they like each other and they understand, but nobody owes the other person anything. It's just because we can work together and you'll both benefit if you work together, but you don't have to. And we felt like that was a good approach to start with. The other thing is our agency or our freight brokerage is taken off, but like my component to that is I'm really good at back office. I mean, I can vet carriers and pay bills and bill customers really well, but we were largely an agency-based brokerage to start with. And so you get some unique models there. Like half of our brokerage freight is dry van freight, so it doesn't work on the assets anyways. And so that's kind of our foundation as to the two companies. They really are separate companies. I actually left the fleet for a period of time and moved the brokers to Twin Falls, which is only about 15 miles away, but I had a bigger recruiting base to hire people, and I got very fortunate. I've got Michelle and Karen and Megan that work with me. Those 3, and then Todd Boffman, those 4 people kind of run the brokerage. I was fortunate to have a couple people pop up, and that's what allowed it to grow, was specializing in the back office. So how do you get them to work together, and how do you get them to sell together? You have to be careful and think that all the way through. In a perfect world, you go into a customer and the customer's all open-minded and they say, hey, we got both of these and I'm going to put a lot of it on my trucks, but when you keep giving me freight and I don't have any more trucks, I'll broker it, okay? Or I'm going to be brokering it, but I can get my trucks in there. In reality, the customers want drop trailers. They want all these things that prevent you from being able to broker it. And then the customers, they wanted assets for a reason. And then because some broker upset them or vice versa, And so the best relationships are the ones where there's just incredible amounts of transparency and working together. We do a lot of customers where we're literally set up twice, once as a carrier and once as a broker. That way, they're not accidentally putting a brokered load on one of my drop trailers or things like that. So it's not easy. You just have to, it's about relationships and people and talking together and figuring it out. Every customer's different, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in there, so much gold in there, frankly. I appreciate you sharing all that. I think, let's just start with the initial outreach in that if I email Kraft, for an example, and I'm not hauling for them today, they don't know who I am, and I say, hey, I'm Greg with Giltner Transportation. I have 300 reefers and would love to be a carrier of yours. That email probably has like a 50% response rate, maybe. Let me ask you that question. What is the typical response rate on a cold outreach on behalf of the asset?
Yeah, so the funny thing about that is all the brokers think, oh, if I just had some trucks, I'd go every customer
You're
just
about to
be
expose me.
jumping. They'd all run through I'd go anywhere in the country, they'd open the door and roll out the red carpet, and I'd come in with those assets, and
It's not like
it's
that?
not as much as you would think. Uh, and so the other thing about the asset side is we're seriously only adding like maybe 5 customers a year tops. That's just what I want because these are long-term partnerships. I want to be with these customers forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't even, as of right now, on my asset side, I don't even really have a sales guy. It's just like the general manager and myself are just kind of dovetailing that in. Our sales guy, we had a long relationship with a good sales guy, but he kind of moved on and started his own business, and we just never replaced him. So that's on that side. But we do go work with our brokers a lot. And when they have customers, I go around and go meet customers all the time with them and take them to dinner. And when there's an asset play in there, we open the door and do that. The asset gives you some credibility as a brokerage for a number of reasons. But you just you don't want your brokers to go say you're going to get assets all the time and then broker everything, even though a lot of the time they can do a better job of. I've got brokers that do as good a job of performance of being on time as the assets could ever do. I've got some really good brokers that just everything's on time, they do a great job. But you don't want to start a relationship off with anything like that. You want to be pretty transparent, and you want to say, this is what you're going to get. This is how we're going to be successful, because brokers can be so good. There's a lot of reasons why for a lot of freight brokers is a better answer. And you need to be proud of that and make it happen.
Attention freight brokers and 3PLs, Greenscreens.ai is transforming how freight professionals price and quote freight. With AI-powered pricing and real-time market intelligence, Greenscreens delivers accurate, reliable predictions to help stay competitive in a constantly shifting market. Whether managing spot rates or long-term contracts, Greenscreens empowers brokers to quote with confidence and boost profitability, removing the guesswork from freight pricing strategies. Trusted by over 220 brokerages, Greenscreens is leading the way in the future of freight pricing. And now there's Illuminate, Greenscreen's latest product designed to shine a light on deeper freight market insights. Illuminate provides unparalleled visibility into spot and contract freight trends, giving users a clearer view of pricing fluctuations and market conditions to inform smarter, more profitable decisions. Visit greenscreens.ai/thefreightpod and discover how Greenscreens and Illuminate can help win more business more profitably.
I love everything you're saying, and I respect the hell out of it too. I mean, I just think you're hitting the nail on the head, because there's problems I could walk through that are solved by your approach. But I know of a brokerage and multiple who went so far as to buy an asset, as in one asset, so they can say they're asset based, and it's all part of a ploy, so that the initial email when they reach out to a shipper, rather than what is now probably a 0.04% response rate for a just broker reaching out to a shipper cold, they think they can get a 50% response rate if they say I have assets. And you're right that like shippers, it can be messy, and the right shippers want that overt transparency, and they want to understand what every part of your business can do. If the assets can do this, they want you to have a SCAC for that. And if your brokerage can do that, they want you to have a SCAC for that. Because just like they understand, the smart ones, the good ones understand that your cost and the price you need for a Giltner truck to run a load of lettuce from LA to Portland is different than what your brokered cost and rate needs to be. And the right companies have that kind of transparent relationship where you can talk through all of that and set it up in a way where everybody can be happy. Another point I just think is so interesting is like, I always thought as a broker, I could outperform every asset. I just thought in general, I'm never restricted by resources. Whereas an asset, if playing as a true asset, is restricted by resources. There is going to be a time when you've got a potato load picking up in Twin Falls and the driver actually breaks down on the way there, and there aren't other asset, your owned drivers who are in the area. And the only option is then to fail on the load, or as a broker, you go find someone else. And that is one part of the equation that just can't be, you can't argue that.
No, 100%. There's a lot of the times when the broker can be better because you're literally dealing with 1,000 trucks are going to hit that market over this weekend. And I have 4 trucks headed that way if I'm lucky, but on the other hand, I mean, I can give you amazing consistency on a lane that I'm good at. I've got every one of my tractors you can load it. It's sitting there preloaded. I can monitor that temperature within a 3-degree temperature range from A to B. I have bells and whistles that go off if the temperature's not right, so in the lanes I'm good at, I can be very competitive, but I can't do it all.
Yeah, so I should have added that caveat, is that the example I used is like one of the few examples where a broker can offer more than an asset. But in a million other examples, the asset can do so much more than a broker in terms of monitoring the temp, consistency on tracking, things like that. You can provide, it's much easier for you to provide connectivity through technology that as a broker, I've got to take at a minimum extra steps. Right. But maybe I can't do it at all because the carriers are unwilling. Doesn't mean I can't get the load there on time, but there are many parts of service and execution. So we'll say that. And one more thing I wanted to add to this part of the conversation, which I just think is interesting. I like how you talked about the idea of 2 separate companies, 2 separate entities that kind of have the line drawn. There's mutual respect and understanding. Because I think one of the biggest reasons that the larger asset-based brokers struggle, or the large asset companies that have brokerages, I think one of the big reasons that they have historically struggled is they always prioritize the assets. And when you do that, you really cripple a brokerage's ability to develop strong relationships with a carrier. Right. For example, we'll stick with the potato example. Shipping out of Twin Falls to Tampa, Florida, to go to a PFG down there or whatever, maybe they have 5 loads a week of potatoes, and during certain times a year, there's just way more abundance of that. And from August till the end of the year, there's 5 times, 10 times as many of those loads available. And so your trucks are busy. There's always something for them to do. But there are certain times a year where there's not as many loads there. And if during those times, let's say the brokerage has this committed lane from Twin Falls to Tampa, and they go find a carrier who's a great carrier and they support the lane and they run it all year and they always show up, they always are on time. And then all of a sudden the assets are looking around and they don't have enough trucks. Your own assets don't have enough freight, and they just go and take that load. They say, you know what? Forget the brokerage has that lane. We're going to take it. We got to fill our assets first. The assets are a priority. All of a sudden, that carrier that the broker has a relationship with, that they've been supporting all this time, they're SOL. They'll always be kind of second fiddle to the broker's owned assets. And that's just a disadvantage that's hard to overcome, because if I'm a carrier, I'm never going back to that broker on any kind of long-term deal.
And as you know, like, brokers are special people. They're intense and they're competitive and all that stuff. If you treat them like second fiddle, then they don't stand for that. They go become somebody else's broker real quick. So that's something we learned early on and took advantage of that to build our brokers through people who had been mistreated.
I'm curious about the other parts of your business that you mentioned, and I was actually unaware of until today. The factoring company and the insurance part of the business. Can you talk about when did those come to be? Why did you start them? And
So the
how do they play
factoring
in the
company,
business?
yeah. So just like a little bit of history on it is, so Doug Blevins and I were partners. We worked together for about 17 years, and then he ended up passing away in 2017. And we were super close. He got cancer, and it was just a tragic thing that happened to our business as part of our history, and we miss him. But the factoring is kind of special to me because I started that myself, even though I was just a part owner at Giltner at the time. I've always enjoyed that. And factoring came out of a mistake I made. And we were actually in the brokerage office in Twin. I hired this young guy to broker for us, and his name was Ramon. He was, giving loads to a bunch of these Middle Eastern guys, and they came in and they were hanging out with us. They just came into our office, and I got to know one of them, and his name was Roddy and Saeed. And they, I just said, hey, why don't you guys just hang out here? You can just run your truck from right here, and you can look at all our freight, and if we can work together, that'd be great. And I learned that they were amazing at getting freight for their trucks, and they didn't need any help there. But I could bill customers and pay them. I had a much cheaper cost of capital, and I was buying fuel and equipment and tires for a lot less than they were buying. So we just kind of rolled them in, and before you knew it, I just broke it off into a separate division because we saved them so much money. I didn't charge hardly anything for factoring, and it just worked so well. I had a gal by the name of Sierra, and I still have her today. She's the reason it's taken off, and they were just like family. And they came in here. To this day, we have spent $0 on marketing or sales or anything for factoring, and we've got like 300 trucks we factor, and it's 100% word of mouth. And then I was able to take that to my vendors, and I didn't want any of them to be concerned. So I laid out everything we were doing because, like, they don't want you to be like an aggregator or somebody that's just giving discounts and stuff. And then we laid out, hey, these are my guys. This is what I do for them. They're in here. We talk trucking, we talk freight, we look at all their stuff. I'm helping them, with, at this point, it's rolled into where I'm helping them with insurance and licensing. I help them get their authority sometimes, and they're going, wow, that is a lot more than what a factoring company would do. And so we're cool with what you're doing. You keep being part of these guys' lives. Twin Falls is actually I I think they call it like a refugee community or something where people from the Middle East were coming here after I can't remember which war it was or whatever. We got a huge influx of really good, super hardworking, super smart Middle Eastern guys, and we got into that thread of them. And there's a big pocket of them in Twin Falls and also Ohio, and they're just good people, and it's just grown. And that's what started that. I always wanted to have an insurance agency, um, and that's a chicken or the egg problem because you can't get a good market till you got a bunch of trucks, and you can't get a bunch of trucks till you got a good market, and you just have to grind. I have Nikki that runs my insurance office. She's a NATME certified safety supervisor, so she's able to talk to these guys and say, hey, the reason you're paying too much for insurance is you got 3 tickets last year. What the hell are you doing? The only way you're going to save any money is if you get out there and you don't get any tickets and you run super safe. And then she works with them, and she works harder for a one truck guy than anybody would ever do. So it's just all small little companies, but we're doing a lot of good for a lot of people there.
So first question is, why you said you always wanted an insurance agency? Why?
I just think that insurance is such a complicated piece to this business, and it's kind of a racket to a certain extent. People pay way too much for insurance. And if you're going to be good at trucking, you got to be good at insurance, or you'll just give away all your money to insurance. Right now, the fleet is basically self-insured because of some captives we're in, with a lot of different layers and a lot of different types of insurance. So I'm a very good insurance buyer. Um, and I just was able to I knew I could help people if I did that for them. These small trucking companies, the way people give them insurance is they just say, go on my website. You're so small. I'm only going to make, $1,000 on you this year in commission. Just sign up and I'm not going to spend any time on you. That's the way that everybody services one truck guys. My people go to them and they say, come on in here, sit down. Let's talk about this. okay, here's how you live from a safety standpoint. You got to get safer. You can't have any wrecks. You can't have tickets. You got to be good. And by the way, I'm going to take and put your liability insurance here. I'm going to put your cargo over here. And I'm going to get you this fizz dam through this other market. I put it all together and you're saving them, $5,000 a year. And so it's huge for these guys. And then they tell their buddies, and then before long, you got a real company. So I just knew I could help people, and they needed that help. And I was lucky. I had, Sierra and Nikki to take those two companies and get them going. I've also got my controller, Mandy. She's got a network of people that can finance, and we've dipped our toe in helping people finance trucks and trailers and buy some of our used stuff. And we got our butt kicked pretty good this last year because we financed a bunch of people, and then in the downturn it was just bad timing. So, and that was good. It was good for her to have to learn during a hard year, and she'll take those lessons and be, she was fairly small, so we could take those hits okay, but it made her good. So we're going to benefit for a lot of years there. But if you look at the whole spectrum of what we're doing to help people, small carriers want to be part of this. We can help them with their financing, their billing. We've got freight for them. We got tires. We got fuel, and we actually have people that'll talk to them and help them.
It's so interesting. I wanted to ask you. You're in several commoditized businesses where it's very competitive and very hard to stand out. My old partner Matt wanted us to start a factoring company in the last year, because we have non-compete with freight, and I was just like, man, what are we selling? Like a rate, and like it's just like, so frankly, I thought it looked a little boring, but you could say that about trucking, I guess. But I don't know. It feels very commoditized. It feels very hard to stand out. And what I was going to ask you was like, how do you grow the thing? How do you actually make a name for yourself?
Well,
but I feel like I got the answer a little bit, but I'm going to let you try to answer, and then I'll tell you what I think the answer is.
So with all of our businesses, here's the thing. At Giltner, we don't care if we grow. Okay. We want all the companies I've involved in, our value is we want to be profitable, enjoyable, fulfilling, that complements the rest of your life and improves the lives of others. Okay. So
what was the second to last one?
Okay. So
complements the rest of your life, you said?
Yeah, it's basically balanced where our people have a lifestyle outside of work. And then improves the lives of others. We want to be safe. We deliver as a company, 10 to 11,000 loads a month. That benefits a lot of people. And people that are in the freight business, whether you're a broker or a trucker, you need to be proud of that. That's a big deal to deliver all that freight. That's what makes America run, And so we're proud of that. So if we do a good job, we want to be profitable. I have to remind my people sometimes, I say profitable first, because you don't get to do all the fun stuff if you're not. You still have to have your eye on the ball and stuff like that. Enjoyable means everybody works together well and we take care of each other. Fulfilling means everybody's growing and we're learning and we're improving. And then have a balanced life. You get to see your kids grow up and stuff like that. And then complement or improve the lives of others. You're safe and you deliver a good product to people. You help these small owner operators and the people that you're helping. My wife and I own the business. We don't spend a ton of money, so I don't have a huge ego. It doesn't matter how big we are. At times I've had a little one, and you get humbled real quick when you have those things. They're overrated, And so I just get to, work with good people, and we take care of business. And so as far as growth, when you quit worrying about it, it tends to happen. Now, I looked at your story. Holy cow, you guys grew. I mean, that is growth. Like what both you at Molo and Coyote, that's an incredible growth story. How fast that happened. I could never do that. We grew kind of fast, but nothing like that. So it's a whole different ball game if you want to get a business that can take off and grow at that pace. But we just have nice businesses that we enjoy doing, that we try to get really good at, and then they just naturally grow when we do it right.
Yeah. So the thing I love the answer, and there's so much good stuff in there. And I think what I thought the answer was, in terms of like why you guys have done well with the factor and with the insurance, is just because it seems like there's a very intentional effort to do good by people and to help people in ways that others maybe won't go so far. That kind of oozes out of kind of your other answers. And so I'm not surprised with what you actually said relative to what I thought you'd say, or at least what I was hearing in what you said before. It's interesting because profitable, there's a stigma around it, right? It's a simple concept, right? Everyone should look at a business and think, oh, they should be profitable. Because if you're not profitable, you can't be a business for very long unless you're doing something like just raising obscene amounts of money and burning it and, whatever. But maybe it's because I'm a broker at heart, and brokerage always has this negative connotation that people think you're taking too much of a cut or whatever, that like I never felt like I should just overtly say profitable is part of our values or who we want to be. And at Molo, we grew so fast. There were definitely points where we weren't profitable. We weren't focused on profit in the first few years, but by the time I was fired, we were very profitable. I mean, we were doing very well. So it's interesting though, because I think I never talked about profit like publicly with my team. Like which wasn't the focus. I was so focused on service and execution. And I would say that, that would lead to profit, but it wasn't the focus. And as I've thought about doing this again, whenever my time comes to be able to do it again, I kind of want to make profit like you talk about it. And it's kind of like the forefront. And I feel like you can do it in a way that's very responsible. And you put it out there to your team, like profit is a core, I don't know if value is the right word, but it's a core part of who we are. Because like you said, you can't have all the fun stuff without profit. You can't have you're not going to have the nice Christmas party if the business isn't profitable. You're going to get a piece of Domino's pizza.
Right.
And so I don't know. As I think about that, I want to bring that into my own kind of thought process as I think about my next steps in building a business one day, is like putting profit at the forefront, but doing it in a way that's not
yeah, you don't have to be crazy rich and have a yacht or nothing, but you got to make a net income, or else we just can't hang out anymore. Sorry. We want to build a nice business. You want to get paid, and it's got to be like everybody has to win. As far as profits, as well as you got to make money, the employees got to do good, the carriers, if you're brokering, the customers, everybody's got to win. And with us, it's most of the things I do, or the sayings that I have, they're an and. It's not an or. It's especially when I talk about raise rates, increase utilization, cut costs, and keep it safe. I don't want people to ever say, oh, you put one of those in front of the other, because on trucking, it's all of those must happen. There's no this is in front of that, etc. That's like me saying, would you rather have, if you had a car you wanted to drive, would you rather have gas in the tank or have air in the tires? Well, you got to have both, And so with trucking, you absolutely have no choice. You have to be profitable, but you also have to take safety. And there's not a this in front of that at all. It's both. And it's a must. And these other businesses are kind of like that too. It's just there's nothing wrong, being profitable. You must be that. It doesn't mean you're greedy and you want to be rich, you don't care about people. It's just, this is a math problem at some level. It's a big equation, and you can't do good if you don't make, a profit. But profit is also something to be proud of, because it means you got that because you did think of all the freight you delivered for everybody. Somebody benefited from all that work you did. So
100%. At Molo, we built a great company, and I'm proud of the work we did. We knew when to ask for help, and sometimes that meant going outside of our own company. I'm proud we built an ecosystem of trusted partners like Metaphora. When we needed differentiated industry expertise in business consulting or technology services, we looked at Peter, Ryan, and the team at Metaphora. They've consistently delivered value in the transportation and logistics space for over a decade for mid-market and enterprise brokers, for shippers, carriers, private equity, and freight tech companies. At Molo, we use Metaphora to solve problems we simply couldn't on our own. Metaphora is the only partner you should trust to help you win, whether that's doing ops and tech diligence, growing revenue, optimizing spend, or selecting and building software. Go check them out at metaphora.net. That's METAFORA.net. There's two things I want to hit on. One is related to profit, the other is related to safety. So we'll start with the profit.
Right.
How do you navigate profit and making profit in the last 2 years of the cycle that we've lived through? I want you to talk a little bit about, because I didn't live through it. I've been talking into a microphone while you guys have all been out there struggling in the market, and I'm sorry I'm not in the fight with you all. I wish I was, but I'm not. So I'm curious, like, what has that been like the last 2 years? All I've heard is it's as bad as it's ever been. And how did you navigate it? Like, what kind of strategically did you do to put yourself in a position to not be back in 2004 again, 2005, looking at bankruptcy stuff?
So each of our businesses is different. And the answer to that is a little different for each business. One thing is we've always reinvested our profits for 40 years back into the business. So right now I have 0 lines of credit, everything. We still owe money on our trucks and stuff, but we don't have any lines of credit or anything like that. So we're running, I don't know, like 30 million in receivables with no lines of credit. So that's
not even with no line of credit with the brokerage on the float. Really? How well have you been able to manage? Like, what if you're comfortable sharing? If not, that's fine. But like, I'm just curious about your, what that looks like, the float, in terms of like your days to pay and what you're receiving in.
Yeah, we've always wanted to pay carrier super fast. We're like 22 days of pay is our normal pay. Plus we do a lot of quick pay. We just retain every penny we ever make in profit. And over time, you have 0 lines of credit. You start slow and you just build that way the entire time. And in the good years, you put everything away and then you're good for these kind of years. So as a company, we are actually sitting on I'm having to pull some money from brokerage right now to put into trucking because trucking has lost some money. If you put it all together, they kind of support each other a little bit. So yeah, we have 0 lines of credit. It's something once you've gotten to 0 lines of credit from being maxed out, and it takes, 10 years, 20 years of grinding to get there. But then it's awesome. It's a nice thing and you can take comfort in that. So
that's fascinating.
And that's part of being a stable company. You're responsible for a lot of people. So, when you look at the different companies and how we survive in these tough markets, you've got our agencies. They just go down to where we make less money on them, but really they've got employees. Most of our agent managers, a lot of them are small agencies, so they just their personal family kind of takes a little bit of a hit. Some of them have offices. We've got one agency with about 50 employees, and they've had to get lean, and they've let some people go and kept the good people and got rid of the bad people. We have a number of company stores as well. And again, it used to be you had a bunch of salespeople that weren't performing. You kept them along just trying to make them, someday that guy's going to hit big. And we got rid of a lot of those. We're also carefully monitoring, just like you would manage a brokerage where you manage everybody's gross profit. And if they don't hit their numbers, you kind of got to get rid of them. You coach them up or coach them out. So you run your brokerage well like that. We've always kind of ran a very lean back office. And so there's not a lot of waste there. On the trucking side, through these tough years, so trucking is kind of like that story, the 2 guys in the wood and the bear's coming at him, and the one starts tying his tennis shoes and he says, "You can't outrun the bear." And I go, "I know, but I can outrun you." Right. And so that is trucking. I cannot survive forever at the rates the way they are right now. I am literally being paid less than it costs me to run trucks, and I'm losing money every single month. But I can survive at this level way longer than I guarantee you longer than about 30% of the other trucking companies out there. So by the time I go down, everybody else is long gone. And so that's just how you have to feel. You're like, okay, we have to tighten our belts. We have to get super efficient. We're still losing money, but I know everybody else is losing more. So we're going to be okay. We just have to get down the road a little bit and then we're going to be fine. So it is literally just survival of the fittest, knowing that I can help. I mean, there's guys out there. We have these guys. We say that guy would rather be homeless than chromeless, and he's got these trucks that have all the big pipes and everything, probably getting 3 miles per gallon. Those guys are in trouble. They just, bless their hearts. Those are awesome trucks. I love those guys, and they're never going to make it. So there's a bunch of those guys. The coolest truckers ever are not going to make it. I'm sorry, unless they got a really cool little lane worked out with something where they get paid a bunch of money. So we have to out survive people in this marketplace. We know that's going to happen. Things have got to turn, and I'm looking at it. We're probably quite a bit lower. I'm finally beating like last year. At this point, my rate per mile is higher than it was last year. I'm way below where it was at 2 years prior to that. Another thing that just happened. Okay, so real quick on truck trades is during the good years, every time my trucks got just a little bit old, I would take them in. They would give me a check for 20 grand. I would give them my old truck. They give me a new truck, and I'd have the same payments I had with brand new tires, no maintenance. It was awesome. And we started turning them faster and faster. Before long, I was turning them in with less than 300,000 miles. They were turning around and selling them for quite a bit more. Things turned, and I was financing them at 3% too. Things turned, and we were financing at 6.5 to 7 overnight. And if I wanted to do that, I think they were writing me a check for 10 grand. But now, if I wanted to give them a truck, I had to pay them 20 grand, and my new truck had a payment of about $1,000 a month more. So luckily, all of our trucks were so new, we just kept them all and quit trading. And we put about 150,000 miles on them since we quit trading, but we're still in good shape. As of right now, I'm working with Freightliner, and they're doing a deal where they're buying my trucks for what I owe on them. Still not, I don't make anything, but it's kind of getting back to where it was. And the only real difference now is that interest rates are still too high. So when you look at as we exit this market where nobody can make any money, that was one of the key things that had to happen, was for the used market to get to a decent place. And I think that now you've got banks. There's a lot of trucks running up and down the road right now that haven't gotten a payment on them for a couple months. And banks are going to get to the point here soon where they're like, I can sell that truck if I go repo it and break even. So it wasn't that way before. So they were like, okay, just make me a payment when you can. I don't want to take the hit. But now they're to the point that they're going to start repoing those trucks. It'll eventually, that's part of kind of a sign that you're at the end of this problem, is when banks can repossess trucks. Because I'm competing with guys that haven't made truck payments in a while.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it's a challenging concept to accept, is that for you to get where you need to go, you need other people to fail. You need them to go out of business, and for that and them enough of them going out, that's what brings the rates back up on one side of the equation. I mean, you still need the demand, but
take off. It could be,
that can happen too.
Yeah, that would be better, but it isn't happening right now.
Have you heard anything from customers in conversations you're having that suggest they see any signs of that on the demand side? Because there's nothing I've heard that suggests that's there yet.
Yeah. A couple of months ago, the demand looked like it was tipping up. I mean, I'm sure you're watching all the DAT contract and spot market charts together. We stay glued to that thing, and the spot markets have dropped pretty bad for 2 months in a row. So I thought we were headed in the right direction. I thought 2 months ago we were onto something, and now it's turned back. I think, you're about to go into produce season, and it can't last forever. Something's going to happen. I don't know. It's a weird time out there, and we're just digging in and being entrenched and waiting. But we're doing a lot of stuff to fight harder, and it's good. My people need to go through this, and they're going to come out of this better. And I needed this for my team to go through this. We're talking about things that they never would have got, the messages that we're going through right now. And so I actually, in a lot of ways, I really enjoy this for our trucking team, and they're going to come out of this way tougher than they went into it.
There's such a valuable lesson for those listening about the power of perspective right here, and how Greg's thinking about this stuff, because there's so much opportunity to bitch and moan about how bad, to play the victim and to see the negativity and the profit going down in different elements of the business, and just be frustrated and annoyed and angry or whatever. But I just love that you've said it multiple times now that you're happy this is happening because of how it will shape your people to be better business people and better leaders, and more capable and adept. And I just love that, because I think you didn't have to say it out loud. This is a leadership lesson, but it is absolutely a leadership lesson that anything can be positive if you just look at it through the right lens and see the opportunity in it, and then put your people in a position to make the most of that. So I appreciate your perspective.
Well, good. Thank you.
Now, to the other piece, I wanted to talk about safety, and really, I guess I'm curious, like how have you been able to kind of advance safety in your arena in light of the nuclear verdicts that we're starting to see or continuing to see on the trucking side? Like there are some concerns, at least from what I've seen, about people really even questioning the viability of trucking if these nuclear verdicts can continue to be what they are. So I'm curious what your take is on that, and how do you think about prioritizing and, I guess, developing safety throughout your business?
Yeah. So safety is by far the most stressful thing I deal with. And I've gotten to the point of you can tell me a load was stolen, you can tell me a lot of things bad happened, and I don't even flinch. But when you tell me there was an accident and somebody might have been hurt, that's wrecks my day. That's the worst thing ever, and it stresses me out. So, a couple things on that. Um, I've had some of the verdicts that are crazy. I was talking to some guys yesterday. In 2017, we wrote a check for $2 million, and it wasn't me, it was our insurance carrier, but it was over the weirdest accident. My driver was going down the road, and another car came and hit our truck from the side. Okay, it was in the state of Washington, and Washington has a no. They got this rule, and I'll probably mess up the terminology here, but basically, if there's an innocent party in that car, then the way it works is everybody that's at least 1% at fault has to pay the damages based upon your wherewithal to pay, and then you can sue each other to make it equitable. Okay? So there was a guy driving that car, clearly wrecked into us. There was a pregnant lady in that car, and she ends up 2 years later at the doctor. She's had this child, and this child has all sorts of special needs. Okay, lots of problems. And she's going, what could have happened? The doctor says, God, I don't know. Were you ever in an accident? She goes, there was that trucking accident, and they get lawyered up and they come after us. And I go to Seattle, and it's like 2 years. It's so old by the time it gets to where we're actually going to a mediation over this. But they take my lawyer and a team of people for us. We go in this room, we meet everybody, and this young lady starts talking about her daughter and the work that she goes through raising this child. And she just, if there was ever a mother that could have just melted your heart on the way she talked about her child. Um, we go through this where everybody's met each other, and she talks about her child. We go in the other room, and my lawyer, who had a $250,000 reserve on this claim, goes, do not ever let her tell that story in front of a courtroom. And so you had a thing where it was not on liability, we would have had to prove we were not even 1% liable. And then you had causation. They estimated the level of impact was probably comparable to doing some jumping jacks. And so
That's how minimal the accident was?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was no big deal.
Okay, so this wasn't a big wreck. This wasn't like the car was totaled. Okay,
no big deal at all.
Good context.
Yeah, probably like a pregnant lady doing jumping jacks. I know pregnant ladies who've done those mud races and, all that stuff. I know people that have done CrossFit, pregnant clear up. But it is what it is. The insurance people looked at this. I was just in the room. At this point, it's their money, but they said, they said we might win on causation, but it's going to cost us $500,000 in expert witnesses to get there, and we have a chance to settle right now for $2 million, and they took it. Yeah. So that's when you talk about nuclear verdicts. That's my horror story, and it all worked out because it was so old. By the time it went to that point, that it was beyond the point. Like my current insurance wasn't looking back that far, so I never got killed when on renewal because of it. So I never really had to pay for it, but I still had to live through it, And I've had other ones where I've had some accidents, but so that's kind of the nuclear verdicts. I've actually been there and gone through some of those. We have good drivers. We fire drivers that have problems. Here's what I end up with. And something that I talk a lot about is, for some stupid reason, trucks have all this technology you can buy. You can buy collision avoidance on the front, and you can buy blind spot monitoring on the passenger side. You cannot buy it on the driver's side. It's not an option to get blind spot detection on the driver's side of your truck for some reason.
Why?
I have no idea. Now, if you look at the mirrors that are available to the driver, the blind spot on the driver's side are much smaller than the blind spot on the passenger side. And so you would think logically your drivers are going to do a better job of monitoring that. And really, maybe there is no blind spot. Somebody would make that argument. So Freightliner in the fourth quarter of this year is going to add that as an option to the trucks. And that's one thing I told them, is I will never buy another truck ever that doesn't have that. Because I do have some horror stories about blindside. I've been going down the road and somebody tried to pass me. I've had drivers go to pass somebody and somebody tried to pass them at the same time. My guy was going the speed limit, so the car that went to pass us had to be flying. But my trucks have a million pieces of data that come off them and say, this is your speed limit, this is when they pushed on the brake, this is when they pushed on the throttle, this is when they turned the turn signal, this is what the driver was looking at. The cars going to pass me flying don't have anything. So it's like, what? And it's a terrible situation, and the lawyers are so good. And if you're in the wrong jurisdiction, you're dead before you even get to anybody looking at it. So it's a crazy racket. So my new trucks they've got collision avoidance on the front. They've got blind spot detection. They're going to have it on both sides. I've got tire pressure monitoring all the way around. The worst thing is, man, if you ever see a steer tire blow on a truck and you watch it through the cameras, that's not fun. Those steer tires are terrifying when they blow. So you got to put good tires on there and monitor them. And then we monitor our drivers. So if somebody has a hard brake or a stability warning, or speeding alerts, we have people that watch that full time, and we respond to it. We coach them up, or we get rid of them. So it's a nonstop battle, and we try very hard. I'd like to be better at it than we are, but we're as good as anybody, and it's just something we focus on all the time. So it's tough, but that's something you better be really good at if you're going to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate how the intensity with which you talk about it, because it's clear that it's a priority for you, and you kind of walk through all the details and all the controllables that you have, and how you focus on them to support and make sure you're well positioned. But in spite of all of that,
Sure.
because of the actions of anyone else who could be on the road, you could be in the midst of another nuclear verdict situation. And because of the laws that govern states like Washington or Alabama is one I know,
Sure.
and there are plenty of others where even if you cause 1% of the damage, if you have the deepest pockets, you might be paying 100% of the damages. And I'm just curious if you think there's a path for that to, like, for the legal aspect of all of this to move more in the trucker's favor down the road, or you think this is just something we're going to have to live with and be insured well enough to support?
Yeah, I don't know. You see things going on. I think Texas did a new thing not too long ago where they made it a little bit harder to do nuclear verdicts. They had some really bad ones over the last couple of years, and Texas is a fairly conservative state. I don't know. It's things are going to change, and it is. If there was anything that terrified me, it would be that you buy insurances, you buy safety things, and you're still terrified. That is the most stressful thing in this business by far. And I don't know. We're doing the best we can, and I hope we can survive, because there's a lot of good people it takes to build these companies. And if you drive through Las Vegas or anything, every other sign is on, hey, if you've been in a trucking accident, let me represent you. There's so much money. It is. I think that there was some reforms in medical liability stuff, and all those lawyers moved to trucking. And it's a really tough place to be right now. So if there is reform, that'd be great. Who knows? It's overdue. It'd be nice if there was some kind of limitations on that. At the same time, It's, we need to be safe. It causes you to be safe, but it's also going to take some good truckers out of business too.
Well, I appreciate everything you shared with us today. I think this has been incredibly insightful. And I'm going to end this with just one last question. And I like to get some advice from, especially from someone like yourself. What advice would you give to kind of the budding entrepreneurs, people who want to start their own trucking companies, people who want to start their own brokerages, for how they can best position themselves to win in this industry?
I don't, you just want to get good at the fundamentals, get all the training you can get, go in, enjoy it because it's fascinating. Like I said, I'm going to be half my life in this in 419 and 26. And it seems like that's how much there is to learn. And that's how much enjoyment you can have just constantly. You're never going to run out of growth opportunities here. So you can dive in. I mean, you got to be good at sales. You got to be good at safety. You got to be good at accounting. And hopefully you got a team. But in the beginning, you're probably going to be doing it all yourself. And so identify your weaknesses if you want to grow fast. Partner with people if you need to, if you want to. There's people out there if you're really good at one part of it. So get some leadership training, and read a lot of books. We do a lot of stuff. My team's gone through a bunch of training with Jocko Willink and some of his musters and some of his extreme leadership stuff. Love that guy. And I think you just got to dig in and realize it's a long-term game, be conservative, and it's a wonderful industry if you like pain and you like suffering and it's not easy. If you want easy, don't do this. But if you want a crazy ride that's rewarding and has opportunity, then great, dig in and enjoy it. But don't think it's going to be easy. And then when you do have good years, you better bank on that, because there's bad ones coming. So I think it's, I don't know that I have that much advice. It's just too much, but just get after
that
it.
much advice. That was
Yeah.
like 10 pieces of great advice. So I don't know about that much. That was a lot. So I appreciate you.
Oh, good. Well, I appreciate you letting me share.
Thank you. And with that, that's all we got from Greg and Giltner. Great company. If you're looking for a great asset carrier, hit him up, or some brokerage or factoring or insurance. He's got you. So with that, we'll see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Right. Thank you.